It's the third week of June 2025. I'm Dave, I'm here with Andrew, and you're listening to BV Weekly. We'll be talking about some of this week's music news, new albums, new songs, and more, including an anticipated album announcement from Wednesday, a guest-filled Outbreak Fest, and lots more. What's up, Andrew?
Hey, what's going on, Dave?
What'd you do last night?
I early voted.
Oh, nice. Did you vote for Indecision, the Indecision guitarist?
Yes, I did. Justin Brannan for NYC comptroller.
Also of Most Precious Blood?
Yeah. Did you see that today he put out his Spotify Wrapped from last year? Not that those of us who know he's in hardcore bands are surprised that he has good music taste. But it is cool to think that I voted for someone whose top 5 artists of 2024, top 5 most played, were Bad Religion, Circle Jerks, Grateful Dead, Social Distortion, and Earth Crisis.
No Mr. Cardamom on that playlist? I'm, of course, talking about Zohran, who is running for mayor here, who also has a rap career as Mr. Cardamom. We have figured out.
Yeah, it's one that I'm less well versed in than Indecision.
Yeah, and to be fair, we've known about Indecision. We've been following Justin Brannan's political career for a long time.
Since it started. He
is now running for comptroller to replace Brad Lander, who is running for mayor against Zohran. And Justin Brannan has, we've long interacted with him. I've also seen him live on stage playing in Indecision many, many times, including in very recent years.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that he still plays with the band, because it's like, I mean, there's so many people just like who now only know him for his political career, and it's like, oh, like you don't even realize that you can catch him at Brooklyn Monarch or something like that.
Yeah, they're not releasing new music, but they do. Yeah, I think the last Indecision album was like 1999 or something, but they're still playing. They're often on really cool hardcore bills. So yeah, it's awesome. And they still sound amazing, including vocalist Tom, another esteemed podcast host.
Yep. Shout out Axe to Grind. Was Justin there when we saw Indecision with Silent Majority?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we saw him together recently.
Yes.
And that was like a all Long Island and Brooklyn, like veteran hardcore shows. So
yeah, Indecision actually from Brooklyn, but they're kind of like honorary Long Island hardcore.
Yeah. But yeah, so like we've known Indecision for a while, obviously. When Justin, I think like as like a slight digression, I think the punk to politician pipeline, like it makes a bit of sense. Like we saw it with Beto O'Rourke. Obviously there's that new documentary on Joe Keithley, known to some of us as Joey Shithead from DOA. And it's like, I haven't watched the documentary yet, but I did see the new trailer that we posted on BV recently. And it's, I think it just makes so much sense. Like, do you remember we saw that Refused show? Not that the members of Refused are politicians, but Dennis was talking on stage about like, oh, when we were kids, like we kind of wrote, like we were just angry and we didn't like know a lot about politics and stuff, but we would just write songs like, oh, like money controls everything. And now like we're much older and we do know politics and we look back at those lyrics and we're like, yeah, absolutely. So I think it makes a lot of sense that people who get into this style of music at a young age, where you're just sort of like, maybe you're not even old enough to vote yet, but you're just like, I have to voice what I think about the state of things. And then you follow that to actually being in a position where you can influence change. That seems to be at least the big takeaway from Joe Keithley's story based on the trailer. And I mean, even if I hadn't seen the trailer, I think it's fairly intuitive. I think the punk to politician pipeline is
definitely, it makes so much sense. And I think Jello Biafra also ran for some things back, I don't know, many years ago at this point, but it's hard to believe he's not a politician currently, actually.
Right. Happy belated, by the way, to Jello. Birthday was this week. But yeah, and then on a similar note, I would think hip hop to politician also makes, quite a bit of sense. I mean, just as political of a style of music. And yeah, so to find out that, so this is all to say that I didn't know that Zohran Mamdani was a rapper until he was running for mayor. But yeah, he was a rapper known first as Young Cardamom and then Mr. Cardamom. And I mean, I don't know, his music's pretty cool. I was listening to some of it and learning some of the history that like even before like the running for mayor and stuff, like he had a video in 2019 go kind of viral, not because of him, but because of the celebrity chef and actor that was in it. And also, I mean, one of his songs was on the soundtrack to a Disney film that he was the music supervisor of, and his mother directed it. So I guess he kind of has some film connections in there too. But
Oh, whoa. Do you know what movie that was?
it was called Queen of Catwe, Catway, if I'm pronouncing that right, Katwe.
Oh, right. Oh, I don't know that.
I guess you didn't read the Rolling Stone article.
No, I haven't had a chance to read that yet.
It's a good read. It's a good read. I'm not going to claim to have done the investigative reporting but they did. So,
It's been a very musical New York City election this year. I mean, Rolling Stone is writing about Zohran's rap career. Pitchfork published a playlist by him. And I will say, I wasn't following politics as closely as you. I had started to hear Zohran's name earlier this year, but like he really came into focus for me when he opened for MJ Lenderman. That was like, whoa, okay, here's this guy that I've been hearing his name a lot, and now he is on stage with MJ. So yeah, and I feel like ever since then, that was April, it's been all Zohran all the time.
And hey, if that's the case, then kudos to MJ Lenderman for doing that, because it just goes to show you that stuff does go a long way. And I went to the MJ Lenderman night 2 of 3, which had This Is Lorelei. That was on night 1, but based on the video, I mean, it was all cheers. So, and understandably so. I mean, I think the MJ Lenderman fan base is it makes sense. Also, I mean, did you see the Avalon Emerson thing?
She remixed the thing.
Yeah. So when from the debate with Cuomo, where Zohran called out Cuomo for a lot of stuff, and I'm going to borrow from Rolling Stone here, but they were like, "Hey, if that part of the debate sounded almost like a freestyle rap battle, then maybe it's not surprising given his past." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I didn't really look at it that way, but it's true." But so Avalon took that vocal and put a beat under it and played it at Nowadays, which for those of you who don't live in New York is like it's in Queens, and it's kind of like the rave venue for like late night raves, 24-hour raves, cool spot. And so Avalon drops that during her set, and the whole crowd is like screaming. It's a really cool moment. There's audio of it on her Instagram. But yeah, I mean, whether it's being dropped in an Avalon Emerson DJ set or literally MJ Lenderman being like, "Hey, come talk to the crowd at my show." Clearly the sort of indie alternative music community is rallying behind Zohran Mamdani. So, yeah.
Except for Will Butler. Will Butler, formerly of Arcade Fire, big Brad Lander endorser.
Well, Zohran and Brad endorsed each other.
That's true.
For what it's worth, with ranked choice voting, that they're both saying to vote me one, vote the other two. So I think it's
Yes. For more context on Will Butler, he moved to Brooklyn. He's like no longer in Arcade Fire. Don't confuse him with his brother with the similar name. So he moved to Brooklyn a long time ago. And Brad, also a local Brooklyn politician who I've seen announce many a Prospect Park concert on the street and every street fair for years and years in his other roles. Will Butler has been like very involved and always playing benefits for him and whatnot. So anyway, that's continued with his run for mayor. But anyway, they meanwhile Bernie just endorsed Zohran,
and Justin,
which I'm mostly bringing up just to point out how musical Bernie's year has been on the road, quote, fighting the oligarchy with openers including Neil Young, Built to Spill, Jeff Rosenstock, the Menzingers, Alex G, Marissa from Screaming Females, Tim Kinsella, The Armed, Polisa, Laura Jane Grace. It's like the hottest traveling festival of the year.
Yeah. And he was at Coachella.
Who was Bernie?
Bernie, yeah. You
Oh
remember
yeah,
he
that's right.
Claro
That's
brought
right.
him out. It was
Oh yeah.
I was getting a good spot for Green Day, and but ran to the bathroom first. And running to the bathroom meant running past Claro's stage, and then there's Bernie on the big screen. And I just he was in LA that day with some of the artists you just named, like Neil Young and Jeff Rosenstock. And I for a second I was like, oh, they must be live streaming the LA thing. Then I was like, no, wait, like this is live. He's here. It was like it was a very crazy experience. But yeah, very musical year for Bernie Sanders. Very fun to watch videos of like the armed covering the Stooges in a gym for at a political rally. It's just
Did any politician show up at the Turnover show?
not to my knowledge. No one on stage. Yeah, I saw Turnover play Peripheral Vision in full for its 10th anniversary since we last spoke on BV Weekly. Not to be confused with Turnstile. It's like my brain is like the last 2 weeks were like Turnstile did something on a daily basis, and then I go see a band called Turnover, who toured with
Yes.
Turnstile in 2019 and other times before that. But that was like their big joint tour. And they sound nothing alike, obviously.
The most confusing tour since Jawbox and Jawbreaker.
Yeah, it does feel like the spiritual sequel to the Jawbox Jawbreaker tour. It was funny because there were actually people in one of the comments on one of our Instagrams being like, "Oh, they should with Turnstile," and someone being like, "You mean like the one that happened 6 years ago?" And they were like, "Oh no, I didn't like. How did I not see that?" But it'd be crazy. I mean, honestly, if it happened now, it would like make a lot more sense. I mean, I already saw a Turnstile Beach Fossils show. And
didn't Citizen also open for Turnstile in recent years?
Citizen opened the first Glow On tour, and Citizen are Turnover's sister band, and we're on this tour. So to actually talk about the show, it was I wrote a review on this on the site BrooklynVegan.com, so I feel like my thoughts are there in full. I don't want to ramble too much, but if you want to know about the show, go there. But as like a quick elevator pitch for like why it felt so special, I mean, I saw Turnover a number of times when Peripheral Vision was a new album. The first two times that they played New York, I'm pretty sure it was. I mean, it's definitely the first two times I saw them in New York, but I think also the first two times they were even here since its release were both opening for other bands. And finally, when they did what some semblance of a headlining tour, it was co-headlining with Citizen. Citizen did play last though, and that was at Market Hotel, which is a very tiny place in Bushwick. So like to see them 2 sold out nights in a row at the 2,700 capacity Brooklyn Paramount, playing the record that when they were touring it, they were just like normally an opening band kind of thing. Like, I mean, crazy. Like, I mean, you know, I guess that's not true for every band. You would agree, right? Like a lot of times if you have a classic record, we can think back to when it was popping off and you're like, oh yeah, that band was headlining a bigger venue every 6 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was not that. It was like a really slow burn. And like, you could just see them playing this now classic record for 100 people who were lucky to have showed up early at a World is a Beautiful Place, Pianos Become Its Heath show like that, which I did do. And it was, a very, very perfectly curated night of atmospheric emo adjacent music. But in any case, to see them do this for 2,700 people, all of whom were singing every word, a lot of whom seemed probably like they were probably a little too young to have seen the original Peripheral Vision tour. It was like magical, and it was just felt so cool, and it felt like it wasn't just like, okay, this record's bigger now, this band's bigger now, but it's also like that record is like kind of ahead of its time. Like even though it did connect well when it came out, just sort of the mix of like emo with like it has like the driving backbone of like a band from the punk scene, and it has like sort of the lyricism of that you associate with emo, but then like they're clearly going for like dream pop, jangle pop, post punk. They were really into like the Captured Tracks roster, you know, to have just mentioned Beach Fossils for example. That's they were an influence on this record. And it's like, it makes so much sense that it has aged gracefully, because I feel like now, like the dreamy, vibey, atmospheric, hazy thing is like a way bigger deal for like Gen Z rock than it was 10 years ago. But then you add in like these lyrics that you can really like emotionally sing to. And that's just always going to, I think, connect with audiences on a deeper level than like music that feels like it's really vibes oriented, but maybe not so lyrical. So it just feels like they have this perfect mix, and they were not, it's not like it was created in a lab to be a perfect mix. If anything, this record was considered risky when it came out for this band who came up playing like moshy shows and making music that sounds like Lifetime and the movie Life and early Title Fight. This was considered like, are people going to hate this? Like, this is so different. So it felt just like, wow, like Turnover made this artistic risk 10 years ago, and the world, like they kind of, I don't think, like not like other bands too, but it's like the world moved in the direction of appreciating this kind of music even more than when it came out. So it just felt like it. What I've been to some 10th anniversary shows where it feels like, you know what, I think that part of my life is over, or where it feels like, oh, it's so fun to have this nostalgic experience. And this like didn't feel that way. It was like, yeah, I've known these songs for 10 years, but I feel like something is happening right now in front of me that feels new. And that's like, that's a really cool experience at a 10th anniversary tour.
Yeah, this also feels like a common story for bands on Run for Cover.
What's another example that comes to mind for you?
Title Fight.
Yeah, I mean, Hyperview, I think, which came out the same year as this record, had that same, like, it was a risk, it was really shoegazy, and now it's, like, so influential on the current shoegazy boom.
Super Heaven.
True. Yeah, and another band who had that shoegazy thing. Because, you know, I mean, what it comes down to, too, is, like, Run for Cover, where, granted, Title Fight had left Run for Cover by the time they got shoegazy. But Run for Cover kind of was at the center of that shoegaze emo crossover thing that happened. You know, they had Pity Sex, they had Cloakroom. It might just also be like something that happens in punk and emo, because it's like these weren't buzz bands.
Right.
Like I always look to Joyce Manor putting out their debut record and playing Party Expo in New York, the now defunct Bushwick DIY venue that was on the 3rd floor of a building that you had to walk upstairs to, even if you had big amps. And you know, it's long gone, but they played to 40 people at this dingy place, and then they celebrated the 10th anniversary by playing it in full at a sold out Central Park show, which Turnover opened.
So indie bands who were on punk labels got underappreciated at the time, now much bigger. What about the punk bands who were on indie labels? Is it going to happen for Cloud Nothings now that they signed to Pure Noise?
I mean, I think, and I love Cloud Nothings, this is not a diss, but I think that's like kind of a good example of it not happening that way. Like they just did a Here and Nowhere Else 10th anniversary tour, and I think they were playing the same size venues they were when it was new.
Right. But how will the new album be received?
The one that came out last year?
Oh, all right.
Like, there you go. But I just to be clear, I mean, I love Cloud Nothing. It's such an important band. But yeah, I mean, it's I think we see a lot that with some of the bands that are really hot, like really buzzed about, must see band at South by Southwest, must see band at CMJ, on like NME's year-end list for their debut record kind of thing. And then that record is 10 years old, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, remember when people cared about them? Like it's, I mean, you know, this is something we could talk a lot about, but it's like the hype machine spits you up and chews you out. Like, I said that backwards. The hype machine chews you up and spits you out. And that's not what happens when you're part of a scene with a fan base. The difference it comes down to is the punk scene is driven by fans, and the like hypey indie scene is often driven by press and hype and media and stuff like that. So it's like when you're connecting with teenagers or early 20 somethings, regardless of what the press is saying, and then you fast forward 10 years, those people are 10 years older and they've watched you grow and they've listened to all your new records. They're like, you have those people for life. But when you come out of the gate and you're like, you're popping off because the press thinks you're hot, but the press is fickle and gets bored and wants a new trend, and by album 2 or 3 they're kind of like, oh, you didn't deliver, diminishing returns, moving on. The people who were following your band in the first place because you got best new music like 6 months into your career or something, they're moving on too. It's an age-old story.
Right. Meanwhile, I haven't seen any shows in the past week, but I did watch the Pee-wee Herman documentary, which by the way is amazing. It's over 3 hours. Took me a few sittings to get through. Well worth it. I was always a fan. It filled in some blanks. It jogged some memories, and it's really sad. Pee-wee passed away a couple years ago while they were making this documentary, which he was heavily involved in. And so, yeah, it's a tearjerker, especially at the end. And I don't want to give too much away, but if you don't think you're interested in Pee-wee, but you're interested in music, there's tons of connections there, including, I feel like, something you, especially Andrew, would be interested in if you don't already know this, is how much Gary Panter, the visual artist Gary Panter, was, designed all of Pee-wee's sets and all the art. Gary Panter, best known for kind of developing the West Coast punk aesthetic. So, yeah, it's very cool. And Gary talks a lot in the documentary as well. It's just one of many music connections. Grace Jones is in there.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So we've got the punk to politics pipeline, and we've got the punk to creating the sets for Pee-wee Herman pipeline.
Yes. I mean, it was much more than just the sets, but yep, the whole visual aesthetic, which, him and Pee-wee were like made for each other.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have to watch this. I don't know a lot about Pee-wee Herman, but I love a good documentary. I can watch a documentary about a topic that otherwise would bore me to tears. So if it's a good doc, I'm going to check it out.
Oh, yeah. You should definitely at least watch or rewatch Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And if you've never seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I guess I'm recommending that anyway. You need to see Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Well, I'm sure someone will judge me, but yeah, I haven't. I'll be honest. I have not seen it.
Yes, do that immediately.
Got it.
What else happened this week?
So as for some shows we didn't see, I lived vicariously through video footage of Outbreak Fest. The two that stuck out the most to me were, so they did Outbreak. The Outbreak happens in Manchester, UK. I've never been. I want to go very badly. It's a 2-day festival. And this year they also did 1 day in London. And the London one was headlined by Turnstile, who brought out Shabaka Hutchings, who now just goes by Shabaka. He plays the flute on Sunshower on their new record, but here he did an extended intro of Never Enough with them. And then Blood Orange's Dev Hynes came out and sang his part on Alien Love Call. And then Knocked Loose also played in London, but they headlined in Manchester. And their set had a lot of guests too. They brought out members of Speed, Deaf Heaven, Loathe, Static Dress, and Pest Control. They also had a legendary Wall of Death, which we've seen from Knocked Loose before, but no less legendary here. And they ended their set with the outro track by their side project, X Weapon X. So there's a lot of really cool surprises during the Knocked Loose set. Something I wish I could have seen in person.
And the footage looked awesome. And I'll just say right now, that new Deaf Heaven record, definitely in my top 5 of this year. Last year's Knocked Loose record, definitely in my top 5 of last year. I love both of them. I love their screams. But what I really loved seeing in the footage from Knocked Loose set was even more than Deaf Heaven joining. Because if I wasn't watching the video, do I immediately realize that's George from Deaf Heaven screaming instead of Knocked Loose screaming? I don't know. But when Jem from Speed got on stage with Knocked Loose, that I think was actually my favorite moment from the videos. It was just great to hear Jem doing his hardcore thing with Knocked Loose. So, and then of course I do love that last Speed record as well. But
yeah, and as we mentioned last week, Catch Speed on tour with Turnstile this year.
Yeah, and actually, more than wondering if Jem will be doing vocals guest appearances with Turnstile, I'm wondering if maybe he'll be the one playing the flute for them.
That's a really good point. I did not think of that. Yes. And it is really, okay, so I'm glad you said that, because when I first heard Never Enough, is there going to ever be an episode of this show where we don't talk about Turnstile? When I first heard Never Enough and the flute came in, I was like, oh, Turnstile is pulling a Speed, a flute on a hardcore song. And then for some reason, I forgot that narrative and never said it again, never mentioned Speed in my review. Should have. Speed it's like Speed are so influenced by Turnstile, and now I'm like, is it possible that Speed returned the favor and the flute that they do influence Turnstile to do flute? I think it's possible.
But Turnstile had to show off and recruit one of the world's best flute players. But
yeah, I mean, hey, but Jem's good at flute. I mean, I don't know if this is like, this is just like a personal thing for me. So like, if people are bored, if you're bored, just shut me up. But like I personally have just been on a very big like spiritual jazz kick. I've been like really, really, really devouring like Alice Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders and stuff like that. So when I last saw Speed and they opened up with the flute thing, what used to seem like an interlude to me all of a sudden felt like a lot more monumental. I was like, oh shit, they're opening with like this meditative, like new age spiritual jazz thing now that I think about it. And I'm like, this is amazing and totally sets the tone and makes so much sense. And then when Turnstile did it, like it felt, I mean, I feel like Turnstile also have a very spiritual angle to them. So like it makes me think like this is bigger and more important to them than just like, let's throw like a long interlude for no reason. Like it feels like, no, we want to, like they got Shabaka because they needed somebody who understood the power of meditative music, and he does, and I think Speed do too. I think Speed, when they do it, it really does like evoke a very similar feeling to like really good like new age or spiritual jazz when they do it.
Yeah, and I actually kind of take that back, because actually it might even be a bigger flex that when your vocalist is an amazing flute player than having to actually hire one.
Fair, very good point. Yeah, I can't wait for new music from Speed. We know it's coming because they talked about LP2 with us at Coachella, but I feel like Speed are just like so primed for like an even bigger moment than they have already. And then now you have Turnstile and Knocked Loose and Coachella co-signs in the same year. I'll say this, and then we can move on. But like, and then we'll never ever again talk about the conversation of Turnstile's relation to the hardcore scene. But if you are relatively new to Turnstile and not really that aware of the hardcore scene, or like just haven't checked it out or whatever, I'm just going to throw Speed's name out there as probably the best current, very, very, very hardcore band that Turnstile fans who are less aware of hardcore should know, I think. Was that worded in a way that made sense?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I also want to shout out that Iron Mind record. You mentioned it came out last week. It's like Speed, also from Australia, like Speed, also on Flat Spot Records. I've been listening to that this past week and really kind of enjoying that. So between Outbreak happening, Turnstile, Speed, this Iron Mind record, the new Biohazard song, which is actually good.
It's is actually good.
I'm feeling like jazzed again about hardcore. No flute pun intended.
Oh, nice. Awesome. I wouldn't have picked up on that pun if you didn't say no pun intended. Yeah. And I mean, also this week, speaking of the Armed, they just dropped their second single from the new record, which seems to be their most heavy and hard, like punk hardcore oriented in a while. And the singer of Punch and Super Unison is on it as a guest.
And of course, it's not for complete hardcore reasons, but also Speed's label mate now, Pigpen, featuring Matty Matheson, famous chef, also getting a lot of press lately. A few new songs out, worth checking out.
See, now you're going to get us back to the conversation of the way press handles hardcore.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, I'm not going to actually do that. I did want to say about Outbreak Fest, the reason I want to go so badly, I think they do something that I find severely lacking in most American music festivals. They are historically a hardcore festival. Like you could accurately call Outbreak Fest a hardcore festival. But then it's like the lineup has Alex G and Slow Dive and Sunny Day Real Estate and Denzel Curry and Danny Brown. And it's like they've branched out into so much different territory while maintaining an identity. And I think it's worth shouting out how impressive that is, because I find that a lot of festivals end up doing one or the other, where they're like, okay, it's time to branch out into other styles or we're going to become obsolete. And then all of a sudden they just don't seem to have an identity anymore. or a festival is like our whole thing is being this genre of music or this era of music, and then by the third or fourth iteration, you're like, it's kind of feels like diminishing returns, because it's like, how much more can you do if you are so closed off to like who can even fit your premise? And I just think Outbreak are nailing the balance of having a specific identity, even still being able to be called a hardcore festival. And it's also very much a hip hop festival, very much an emo festival or an indie rock festival, or like all these things, a shoegaze festival. So I think that they're sort of what they're following, like they're like style or formula or whatever you use. Like, I want to see it more. I think it's really effective.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't Sound and Fury last year kind of was moving in that direction, but they rolled that back a little this year. This year feels way more hardcore.
It does, yeah. And you know, and I don't know what goes on. You know, like for all we know that they tried to do something different. For all we know, they intentionally went back. Like, I'm not, you know, I mean, Sound of Fury is an amazing festival that I've also never attended, but yeah, it does seem like Sound and Fury, like we're on a similar trajectory, and this year seems like they're more going back to like keeping it hardcore. But in any case, a festival that didn't happen this past weekend was Bonnaroo.
Huge disaster.
Yeah. Weather related cancellation. Saw video of the campgrounds being fully flooded and stuff. Having just camped at Coachella, I like got goosebumps looking at it in like a, thank God I did not have to deal with that kind of way. I mean, granted, you know, the lack of rain in California is not a good thing either.
Right.
But
yeah, Bonnaroo supposed to be 4 days in Tennessee. Day one, Thursday, did happen. Friday morning, the fest was still on, but then they started. It was like, we're delayed opening, and then bands like Manic and Pussy. Marissa was on Instagram saying, "And our set is canceled. I already had my makeup on," and then by Friday night, they just canceled the entire fest, not just for Friday night, but Saturday and Sunday as well. So yeah, that was huge festival. Lots of people travel there for that. Lots of people were already on the campgrounds, as you pointed, or maybe you didn't point out, but yeah, a lot of people were already on campgrounds. Even on Friday, the videos started circulating of people killing time, slip and slide. And yeah, that's it. Everybody had to go home. The bands, the fans. What a mess.
All right. So switching gears, we said on the first episode of this show that we hope to be talking about a new album from Wednesday soon, and now we're on episode 3, and we are. They recently released their first single, Elderberry Wine, which is both one of my favorite Wednesday songs yet, and also one of my favorite songs of the year so far. It's like very overtly country. And now they announced the record. It's called Bleeds. It comes out in September on Dead Oceans, and the new single, Wound Up Here by Holding On, is much more in the shoegazy, grungy kind of like guitar indie rock realm that Wednesday also do. And so it just feels very exciting that we have two songs. They both represent pretty different sides of Wednesday's sound. I think it bodes well for the record, which like I would have been excited just for a Wednesday record. So now hearing two singles that are both really promising and really different, it's like the excitement is rising for me.
I'm excited to hear it as well.
Speaking of Asheville, North Carolina, Kerosene Heights also announced a new record that I'm really excited for. I think they're one of the best new kind of like Midwest emo style bands. With all the hardcore we've been talking about, we should also shout out that End It have finally announced their debut album. It's called Wrong Side of Heaven. It was produced by Brian McTernan, who, in addition to doing Turnstile's Nonstop Feeling, is like a veteran producer who's done everybody from Converge and Cave In to Hot Water Music to Thrice and Circa Survive, and the list goes on. Brian's amazing. He also used to front Battery and now fronts Be Well. And the record is called Wrong Side of Heaven. It comes out on Flatspot Records in August. And I mean, we kind of talked about End It a little bit because they opened the Turnstile show in Brooklyn, but like total staples of the hardcore scene, the Baltimore hardcore scene, and just mainly only had done EPs up until this point and played like countless live shows. So I'm really excited we're finally getting a record. The new single is called Pale Horse. It's 72 seconds long. It's what you want from End It.
Yeah, End It's set at the Turnstile show was good, but when I saw End It, I don't know when it was, a year ago or something in Austin, it was actually the Flat Spot what was supposed to be a South by Southwest showcase, but then got moved to be a not South by Southwest showcase due to the military thing. Endit played that one. And I've seen Endit a lot of times, actually. A lot of times I walk in, I see Endit as I've seen Endit as the 6 p.m. opener many times. They were sort of that again for this Turnstile show that they just got added to. But at that Flat Spot show, which was really, it was, people were there for Flat Spot bands. So it was an Endit crowd, and Endit, I don't know if they were the actual headliner, but they truly felt like a headliner on that show. I felt like I really saw what Endit was capable of, and it just felt like the biggest hardcore band in the world that day, and just their songs are already so good. But that really showed me that this, with the new, just to be clear, they have yet to release a full-length album. This is a very long-awaited album, and hopefully not too long. Hopefully they didn't wait too long. But yeah, they just following that buzz of those great early EPs and knowing what they're capable of in the live show is just excited for this to be a big one.
Yeah, I think I'm really curious to hear how Endit translates to being an album band, because, some hardcore bands are EP bands, and they have short, straightforward songs. Sometimes when that's the case, there's a part of me that's like, maybe that's why they haven't really done this yet, because they're like, we're not really writing records. But so I'm kind of really curious to hear, like, does this feel like Endit elevating to the full length album form, or does it feel like 3 EPs in a row? So we'll see. But yeah. I'm really excited. Like you said, like they've been at the forefront of hardcore despite not having an album, or unrelated to not having an album. So I'm really curious to hear what album Endit is like.
Definitely. What other albums do we have this week?
Good amount. My favorite record of the week is Yaya Bay's Do It Afraid. Wow, we always love Yaya Bay. She's been on our year-end list multiple times. She's hard to pin down, but the record, like a lot of her other albums, kind of moves through soul, R&B, hip hop, Caribbean music. Her family is Caribbean. She lives in New York, but it's like she's like, in my review, I call her a DIY auteur because a lot of it is self-produced, mostly self-written, and even self-financed. She made the record on her own budget before she had a label for it. So, and it's like, as the scope is on par with like a big major label R&B record. So she's awesome. This record's great. Also out this week is Samara Sin's new EP, Backroads. She's like a rising artist in the sort of alt rap and neo soul world. She's been co-signed by Lauryn Hill and Erykah Badu, which I think is all you need to hear, and really, really, really promising. Maxo, also a rapper from LA, has a new record called Mars is Electric. Joliet, who are a really good screamo band from Mexico City, have a record out called Perdidas Variables. It's probably not pronounced that way because it's in Spanish. Variables. Super, super good. I think I say this a lot about screamo, but you do not need to speak the same language as a screamo band. It's just one of those genres. So the whole thing is in Spanish, and it's amazing. And it reminds me of Envy, who are Japanese and also don't sing in English or Spanish, for that matter. And then speaking of emo that is not for America, huge shout out to Sport, the French band, who are back with their first album in 9 years, In Waves. Sport are one of the best emo revival bands of the 2010s. They played, I think, what was their only New York show at the Brooklyn Vegan CMJ party that we talked about at Baby's All Right on last week's episode. And now they're back with their first album in nearly a decade. And then Kelsey Walden, a really good country singer who's on the late John Prine's label, Oh Boy Records, is back with a very good album called Every Ghost. I review all of those and notable releases. Bill reviews more in Indie Basement, including US Girls, Tropical Fuckstorm, Tan Cologne, and Liam Finn. And there's other cool stuff out this week, too, that we don't have reviews up, but that we like Buffalo rapper Shay Noir, Hotline TNT. Haim's new record is out. So, yeah, a lot of cool stuff this week.
I wanted to shout out that record by artist Anastasia called Tether. Pitchfork just gave Best New Music. We didn't mention that last week when it came out, but been listening to that. It's got some Nina Simone, Nick Drake in there. Really good. Recommend that one.
Awesome. Before we go, other quick things that I think are worth mentioning. Motion City Soundtrack announced their first album in 10 years. Fortet has now, in the past couple of weeks, remixed The Cure and Mazzy Star in A Way You Can Dance To. Very cool.
Highly recommended. In other news, B-52s and Devo announced a co-headlining tour. Both bands have said that they were done in the past. In fact, I think Devo has been advertising. It's been their final tour for multiple years now, but maybe this will be their last tour, so don't miss them. Texas is the Reason, who had previously announced on Best Friends Forever, which Wednesday is also playing, by the way, and Riot Fest announced more reunion tour dates. Wilco announced the 2026 edition of their Mexico Destination Festival. That's got a great lineup. Dr. Dog, Dinosaur Jr., MJ Lenderman, Waxahachie, Ola Tango, Michael Shannon, Jason Narducci's REM cover band, which is fun. So, if you can head to Mexico, there's a festival. Nine Inch Nails began a tour and have been playing Rarities. We're excited for that to get to Brooklyn, where it's hitting Barclays Center 2 nights, I think.
Yeah, and then on top of Texas, the Reason fans of 90s and emo, 90s and or early 2000s emo should also know that Elliott is doing a reunion tour. But sadly for us, they're not playing the East Coast except for Buffalo. So come back soon, Elliott. And I think that's about it. What do you think?
We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks so much for tuning in to BV Weekly. If you like what you heard, like the episode, subscribe, give us a good rating, tell your friend about us. All those little things go a really long way. We really appreciate it. Dave and I will be back every Friday morning with updates on news, albums, songs, and more. And thanks so much to Joe D'Agostino from Cymbal Z Guitars and Empty Country for the great theme song, our co-producer Kevin Duffel, our mix engineer Nick Gray. See you next week.